Hello, guys, and welcome back to Beyond Entrepreneur. This is episode 2. I'm Kristen, your host, and today we have a very special guest, Mel Bledsoe. Mel, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I just wanted to talk today about your career and that journey that you went on. I know you work in the medical emergency services, and now you're a professor in that area. So let's just jump right in. What first inspired you to get into the medical field?
So, kind of a few different avenues. As a child in elementary school, there was a show that was from the 70s called Emergency, and it was based on two Los Angeles County firefighters that had just kind of entered into the EMS world. So paramedics didn't really exist until around 1975, 76. And Los Angeles County was one of those counties, and they kind of mimicked the show. So it did pre-hospital emergency care, and then they transitioned to the emergency room. So that was kind of where I got my first kind of taste of it. And then my mom was a nurse, so that kind of helped. And then my dad also traveled business-wise, and so traveling and my mom's nursing, so kind of a jump
Led
stop
you right
there.
down there, yeah.
Then I went to Georgia Southern for some undergrad stuff. Really majored in partying and got my PhD in partying.
Nice.
And came back from that and started working at Monroe Regional Medical Center in Ocala as a radiology transporter, and kind of got re-sparked because I was transporting patients all over the hospital to the radiology department. And I saw these guys coming in, bringing these train wrecks of really sick and injured people.
Yeah.
And I really kind of planted the seed, and I'm like, that's where I want to be. So in spring of 1989, I went to EMT school, and that was kind of the genesis of my journey of emergency medical services.
How would you rate the school for that? Was it like...
It was really
very-
good. I had the professor at the time, her name was Lou Palakowski, and she was an emergency room nurse. Her background was emergency nursing, and she was a phenomenal instructor. So she kind of fed that appetite of me wanting to kind of follow that kind of path for myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. How long have you been doing that for?
So I initially got hired with, so Monroe's one of kind of the odd birds. They had their own ambulance service. It was one of the last hospital-based ambulance services in the state of Florida. So in probably right around 1990, 1991, I started working on the ambulance as a EMT.
Yeah.
Worked as an EMT, and pretty much as an EMT, you're kind of limited to what you can do. You kind of assist the paramedic, and you do a lot of driving. So I got a lot of experience driving an ambulance. And if anybody ever tells you that driving an ambulance, lights and sirens, is not fun, they're lying to you.
I would have to say it'd have to be so much fun. I've only been in the back of an ambulance once, and I did not get the lights or sounds, and I was very disappointed, actually.
Yeah, it comes with a lot of responsibility, but at the same time, it's a little bit of fun also.
I bet. And with that, though, I'm sure it's a very high stress job as well.
And you know, for me, and people always have said that, but it's always come really natural for me. So it's not been stressful for me at all. Sure, you have stressful moments and you have stressful experiences, but overall, it's just been a really enjoyable, fun career.
I bet it's very fulfilling as well. I've never heard, I feel like everybody in the medical field, the first thing is like, it's very fulfilling in that if you truly love doing it, it's
and
amazing.
that's been the key for me is that I've truly loved everything I've done, from being an EMT on the ambulance, then going to paramedic school, and then becoming a paramedic. And that journey has just been, I have no complaints. I've never woke up and said, oh, I mean, sure, you have bad days, but you never wake up and say, why did I choose this career? I've been very fortunate.
Yeah. What led you to wanting to be a professor? And it just evolution to your next step? Or
No. Well, I've always had a background in teaching. Before I went to EMT school, I taught kids how to swim, and I did that for a while. It was a swim school in Ocala. It's kind of a historic swim school. It's called Perry Swim School.
Yeah.
And the founder of that actually did the underwater scenes for the original Tarzan show.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he's a guy named Newt Perry, and he developed the school, and I taught there during the summertime in high school. And that kind of sparked my interest for teaching. So after I got done with EMT school and paramedic school, I got some experience. And then around 1995, I started teaching the lab portion of EMT and paramedic school. And just learning it, kind of getting the fundamentals of teaching emergency medical services while practicing it was kind of a double-edged sword that was really a lot of fun for me, and I enjoyed it. Since then, I have taught various EMT classes, paramedic classes. I taught the first satellite paramedic class in Levy County.
Wait, you got to tell me a little bit about that, because that sounds
So
so interesting.
there was a need for Levy County employees to go to paramedic school, and it was kind of a hardship for them to drive. And this was right around 2000 and, gosh, I want to say 2011. And so it was a kind of interesting class. We only had 12 students, and I only graduated 5. And that's where I kind of started getting a reputation as a hard teacher.
Oh, man.
But, and I never think of myself as being a hard teacher, but I take what I do very seriously. And if I feel like a student is not going to kind of make the mark or be harmful to a patient, or they're not grasping the information, then I just hold a lot of accountability for the students because it's important work.
Absolutely.
You know, most tests you take is like, C's passing. Well, for paramedic school and EMT school, anything below 80 is failing.
Wow.
So it's kind of, we only want you to be 20%. We don't want you to ever be wrong, but when it comes to testing, 20% wrong for testing. So that's kind of makes it a little bit more challenging for the students, and that's kind of why the attrition rate's a little bit steeper than other programs.
How has your perspective on what you do with work changed over time?
Emergency medical services is not the easiest career path, and nowadays the average, career span of a paramedic on an ambulance is anywhere from 5 to 7 years. It's just not that long. And a lot of that is attributed to the 24-hour shifts. And that's probably one of the negatives of the industry right now, is that the majority of EMS providers are doing 24-hour shifts. For me, it's because I got to do a few different career paths that it was kind of always progressive for me. So, being a paramedic on an ambulance for, 10 years in Marion County and Ocala, just really kind of planted a really solid seed for me. We took care of a lot of sick and critically sick and injured patients. And, after 8, 9, 10 years, you're starting to get to that point where, okay, I'm looking for a new challenge. And then the opportunity for ShansCare came available in 2000. And it was coveted job. There hadn't been an opening for ShansCare for a flight paramedic in 7 years.
Oh, wow.
So I applied. A lot of people applied for the position, and I got very lucky and was given the opportunity.
Wow.
And this was in October of 2000. And I mean, my whole goal, because you were going to it's like going from high school to playing professional sports, because it's such a high acuity, responsible. There's just so many dynamics to it. And you're not flying only patients by helicopter, but we were doing jet transports for long distances. So you're kind of flying in a lot of different mediums. And when I first started, there weren't hardly any trauma centers. We were the only helicopter covering pretty much a 14-county area, so we were really busy back then. So really opened my eyes to a whole new way of taking care of people in, like I said, very, very high acuity, very sick, very traumatized patients.
Yeah, and in those situations where it is very serious, and I'm sure there's been cases where you're like, whoa, I've never seen this before. How did you innovate ways to handle situations like that?
And that's the great thing and the fun part about pre-hospital care and out-of-hospital care is that there's so many different ways to manage situations. There's so many different ways to look at situations. There's so many different variables that are out there. And that's what makes it so incredibly challenging is that, in what I see and the way I'm going to manage something is probably completely different. We flew with a nurse, and a nurse perspective on things is completely different than a paramedic's. And that's one of the beauties of that collaboration, is because you get to work with somebody who thinks completely different than you, and that kind of teamwork approach really is a comprehensive way of taking care of really sick and hurt people.
Yeah, you always get to learn something new. I think that's really cool part of the job as well, that it's you're always learning. There's always more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to this day, even after doing this as long as I have, I'm still learning, and there's no
Yeah.
end to it.
That's the great thing about medical field and science, though,
Yeah,
too. It's
for
a big
sure.
plus. It's different things every day. How do you apply that to your students to be prepared, almost that everything changes, that there's always something that's going to be new?
Yeah, and I was talking about this today. We're going through pharmacology right now, and this is one of the harder sections that my students have to go through. And I was telling them, I'm like, even with your pharmacologic agents, the drugs we use in emergent situations, the dosages change, the drugs change, and you kind of have to be really adaptable to the changing world, because new science comes out, new evidence comes out, new research comes out. Well, now we're doing this because it's shown to have better outcomes. So
Yeah.
it's a constant dynamic environment, and putting that in the forefront of my students' minds is like, okay, yeah, we're learning it now, but in 2 or 3 years it may change. So you
Yeah.
need to have that open mind and that open kind of concept of accepting new information all the time.
Yeah, and having that influence on young people, like people that are learning to do something that you love, must be such an incredible feeling. And I think that's so cool. How do you do you have any really cool stories or anything of students that you taught and they come back and they tell you, oh my gosh, because I'm sure that you're such an influence on their life?
Yeah, they're called melisms. So
Okay.
my students call them melisms, and
love
they're like, oh, that's a melism for sure. And I get phone calls, text messages from former students. Hey, Mel, I ran into this. I remember you talking about it. And I just got one from a student that just graduated, last semester, and he had ran a complicated obstetrical emergency call that was very, very rare. And he says, it's just like you described. And I'm like, yeah, so I don't make this stuff up. This is actually
I know
the
what I'm
real
doing.
deal stuff that I'm talking about. So it kind of it validates you in a little bit. But, paramedic school is incredibly challenging, and I'd love to, just give you an example. All of my students are working 24-hour shifts. So they're working 24 on, and they're off for 48.
Wow.
When they get off for 48 hours, the first day they're coming to me. And they have 4 hours of lecture, and then they have 4 hours of lab. So their next day off is they're going to do a clinical either on an ambulance or in the emergency room to learn kind of the clinical side of things. And then what do they do the next day? They go back to work
go
for
back
24
to
hours.
work.
So it's a very challenging and dynamic schedule.
So when my friends say that they're in medical school, that they literally have no time, you are the reason for that.
Yes, I am the
Wow.
guy who does that.
Wow.
So
That's it. That's okay though, because I would rather have someone know what they're doing than someone not.
Yeah.
If I'm dying and need help,
Exactly.
so that is helpful very much. So you've done a lot with this career that can almost kind of be put in a box, just seem very just like cut and dry. This is it. In what ways do you think someone in a more traditional career can still own their career in the path that you did? Because you really did kind of network your way and branch off into different sectors, but all falling under still what you love. So I'm curious about what you think about that.
So I think, for you as a person or as an individual, you have to look at your situation and, are you truly just going to a job for a job? Are you truly looking at it as a career and potentially, hopefully, a passion? And for me, it's always been about learning more, doing more, taking on more responsibility, taking on new challenges, taking on, things that sparked my interest. There were things that I did when I was flying for Shandscare that, that I'm like, is there a better way we could do this? Can we, for example, we had 7 fixed wing bags, and instead of the jets don't come supplied with all the stuff, we have to bring all their bags. And there was multiple times where I'd look at it and say, is there a better way to do this, where we can consolidate these bags and maybe get it down to 5 bags, and maybe the bags are a little bit more user friendly, where we only need one, and the other stuff we can put towards the back, and where if we need to get to it we can, and just trying to be more efficient. And I think that's kind of the way of doing things, is seeing how you can internally challenge yourself to either make things better, or to make your program better, or to influence people to strive to do things differently. And that's always been kind of the forefront of my kind of medicine is art, of kind of creating my art.
Yeah.
To doing things differently, and trying to make it more fun.
And taking that initiative and always wanting to find different things to make things better is very inspiring, because I feel like a lot of people these days are okay with just doing the bare minimum, just working and then going home and not really caring. So it's very refreshing to see somebody that truly is passionate about what they do. For those who are struggling to find what they're passionate about, and to, they are just going through the motions of life right now, what kind of advice would you give them?
You have to find what you're interested in, and you have to be honest with yourself, and you can't let outside influences try to dictate, well, you need to go into nursing because the job market's so secure and you're going to make so much money. Nursing is an incredibly challenging profession, and there's a lot of turnover in nursing because, it is a very tough job. So, and you have to balance that out with, is what kind of lifestyle do you want to live? I'm not going to be driving a $100,000 pickup truck. I'm not going to be living in a resort community. That's just not where I'm going to be, but I'm okay with that. So there's sacrifices along the way that you have to make, but you have to just be truly honest with yourself and balance where you want to be financially with what your true interests are. Like I said, I will never be an incredibly wealthy person, but I'm okay with that, and I've accepted that a long time ago.
I think people also take wealth differently, of what
Oh,
wealth
sure.
means to one person could mean a completely different thing. And with that, I also think people take success different as
Sure.
well. How do you take like success? Like, how do you define that?
I think mine's a little bit different. I measure success through kind of right now as a professor through my student success. So one of the biggest challenges my students go through is they have to take the National Registry exam, and it has become a really challenging exam. So I've been teaching consecutively since I've left flying. This is my 8th or 9th year. And we transitioned to the National Registry probably 6 years ago. And so one of the first things that I did is I stepped up to the plate and I said, I'm going to actually take the exam. So if I'm going to teach this, I need to walk the walk.
Absolutely.
So it's a practical exam and a written exam. And so I did the practical exam first, and then I sat for the written exam, and I passed both of them. And then I kind of had a really good understanding of what my students needed to know for that exam. And ever since then, I have, instead of getting continuing education credits, I just take the exam again. And so every 2 years, I sit for the National Registry exam. And one of the challenging parts about that is they've been changing the exam as a more of a different kind of format. It's an adaptive exam, so you're going to get questions on there that, even for me as a professor, I'm like, I'm not sure about this question. So it's kind of challenging in that way. So my biggest challenge right now is getting my students prepared for that exam.
Yeah.
So this is the internal goal right now, is 100% pass rate on the first time taking it.
That would be awesome.
Well, I've come close 3 times. So 3 out of the 8 years, I've had all but one pass it on their first time, except for one.
But that's incredible. That's like,
yeah,
that's
and you're
crazy.
Like, you get
that's
so
crazy.
close. And you're like, oh, is this the year? And so it's a year-long investment. So I start with these guys in January, and I won't finish until December with them. And then I have to take my hands off and let them fly.
Yeah,
They
it's
have
like
to
letting your
figure
little kids
this out
fly.
on their own. And so then they start texting me, I passed. And then I don't hear, and I can see the results. So I can access the National Registry's results, and I can see where my students are at. And I look, and somebody hasn't texted me, and I know they took it. And I'm like, oh no. So this year I had a dip in my score. So I had instead of having a 90+% first time pass rate, I dropped down into upper 70%. And the reason for that is that they have changed the exam. I think this is their third or fourth revision of the exam. And so we're really having a hard time finding the sweet spot on exactly what we need to do. So I'm eligible to take the exam again, and this is going to be the newest version of the exam in November. Is the earliest I can take it. And my guys finish in December, so I'm going to have a really good bird's eye view on where I may be, not meeting the mark for them. And so I can look at it. And I think that goes back to what we're talking about is that I have the internal drive is that this is my goal, 100% first time pass rates.
That's incredible.
So that's kind of where I'm at with kind of where my internal goals are it's through their success.
I love that. I feel like it's hard to, I've had pretty bad experiences with some professors at college. So it's really incredible to see someone that truly cares and that's going out of their way just to be able to help, not just like, oh, well, here it is. There you go. Good luck. Don't really care. It's very cool that you genuinely care so much.
Yeah, it really is an investment for me, and I do. And one of the things that I've done is that I get to learn my students as individuals. So the very first day of class, I memorize everybody's name. And I have to because I'm developing a relationship on day one. I'm gonna learn your name, and then we have an information sheet, and I want to know something about you. I want to know where you work, where you want to work, what's your goals, what's your 5-year goals, what do you like to do, what's something you're really good at, and that way it's a personal connection with them. And every student learns differently. So for me is that trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And my philosophy of teaching is I'm hard, but I'm very fair, and I'm always available to you. I'm here to help you. I'm here for you to be successful, but everybody learns differently. So learning their specific learning styles and giving them additional tools to help them develop as students, is the key to their success and my success is through, learning what works for individuals.
Yeah. And that's incredible to, like, I wish everyone was as passionate as you were about your job. I wish everybody else was as passionate because I feel like the world would be such a more effective place, and it would probably be a lot happier too because a lot of people do just kind of not everyone, but some people do really just settle because of fear. And I'm sure there were times where you've been scared. I know I was in medical school for a little tiny minute. I'm one of those that got scared and I found something else to do. So I bet especially having such a sense of responsibility over all these people is frightening a little bit, but extremely rewarding as well.
Oh, it is when, they want to, they text you after they graduated. And my name's not Professor, my name's Mel. When I go into the classroom, it's Mel. It's not Professor Bledsoe or anything like that. So it's informal. And the other thing that I truly value with them is that I want them to trust me. That, listen, I know what I'm doing. This is not my first rodeo. And when they start trusting me and they understand that I am in it for them, is that then you get this mutual respect. And like I tell them all the time, or I told my dean the other day, I said, I never have behavioral problems.
Yeah.
I said, they have so much respect for me and they look out for me because I do the same for them. And it's a great relationship to have with your students is they know where the line is with me.
Yeah.
And they know that, Mel can be very direct and assertive if he needs to be, but I don't have to.
Yeah.
Because the mutual respect is there.
I love it. How many students do you have?
So right now I have 26 students.
Wow.
On average, I start with anywhere between 25 and 30. The max I'll take is 30, or the college will take is 30. On average, I lose 30 to 40%. And that's a pretty high attrition rate. And I usually lose them first semester. And the reason why I lose so many is because I believe in my philosophy of high stakes exams. They have to take an exam at the end. It's a national registry exam. That exam does not play. So what I do is that I build their confidence, and I build on tough exams throughout the year. So that by the time that they're done with a
Done
year
with
of
it.
taking exams from
Yeah.
me, they're ready for that exam.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my philosophy. And, I don't do a lot of extra credit points or writing papers, anything like that. You're going to sit down and I'm going to test your knowledge. And it's not about just testing their knowledge, is can they apply the knowledge?
Yeah.
So I'll teach about, a cardiovascular rhythm, and I'll teach this is what happens, this is what it looks like, these are the rules associated with it, and then I put it in a scenario. They have to figure it out based on the scenario now that I've given them all the rules and all the guidelines
Yeah.
and the medication. So it kind of engages them a little bit more.
Gotcha. I absolutely love that. I was actually just about to ask you if you had any questions.
Oh no, this is way out of my. But your passion is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it really is. I really truly don't see it often. I talk to people who like their jobs, but it's not often that I get to talk to somebody that it's like, I just love what I do.
Yeah.
And I think that people underestimate the power of it, because you've done so much just starting somewhere small. You've built yourself up so much just because you love what you're doing so much.
Yeah, and that's what I would want for not only for my students, for my children, anybody, my friends, is, be fearless about your pursuit, about what you want to do, and don't let anything stand in your way, and just be responsible about it.
Yeah.
You can't, go out and get, a mortgage that's $200,000 mortgage and expect to, make it making $30,000 a year. It's just not going to work out.
Yeah.
So you got to be responsible, but at the same time, this is, is the more responsibility and the more education that you get, the more opportunities you're going to have to make more money.
Exactly,
And specifically, if you really truly want to make money, you need to go into business for yourself. And you have to invest in yourself and your company, and have to have that drive and that commitment to grow it. And here's one of the things that I think people have a misunderstanding about is failure. Failure is inevitable, and I think the way that people deal with failure, it either, it kind of rises to the top. The people who are accepting it and don't stop. Who was it? I think it was Smokey Robinson had written 100 songs before he finally found his first hit. So 100 failures before you get your first hit. That's inspiring.
It is very inspiring, because I'm scared to do little things. So, I mean, I think especially for people just trying to figure it out. Like, I don't know about how your 20s were, but mine has been a little rough figuring out, like, finding that true passion and finding something. I know a lot of my friends, we're all kind of struggling with that. And fear is a big part of that, though, because it's the weird transition where you're kind of an adult, but you don't feel like an adult. You still feel like you're a little baby. So it's like figuring that out. It's very scary. So to look back and to see that you've made it gives me a lot of inspiration that I'm the rest of us out there, we're going to be just fine.
Yeah, and I think is your attitude is everything. And listen, no matter what happens, it's an adventure. If I fall on my face, and listen, I am definitely not perfect. My students will tell you all the time is that one of the most liberating things that I do in the classroom is that when I mess up, I own it. I'm like, hey guys, that test question, that was on me. I knew the answer was this, but inadvertently for some reason I did this. And when you fall on your sword in front of your students, you're like, listen, they buy into that because they see you as a human being.
Absolutely.
And see you as, oh, okay, this guy, he cares and he's going to do the right thing by us.
Absolutely. I just love everything that you've had to say. It truly is an inspiring life that you've lived, and I love to see what love for something can do for your whole life.
Sure.
And it looks very rich in a sense of happiness and everything. And I absolutely love that. I think that a lot of people are going to absolutely love to hear everything you say. It's very, truly inspiring.
So right now we actually have, the College of Central Florida where I teach, we have a satellite campus here in Chiefland. It's between here and Fanning Springs. In my opinion, the most beautiful building in the Tri-County area. And we, depending on when we can get enough students, we need at least 12 students to do the EMT program. We haven't done a paramedic program because it's just such a hard time to get that many paramedic students from this region. But, we offer year-round paramedic programs in Ocala. It's really interesting that you mentioned Levy County is that it's a great, one of my favorite EMS agencies, and the reason why is there's no hospitals here. You know, the Gilchrist, Levy, Dixie County, the Tri-County area, there are no hospitals. So these paramedics that are out here running these calls are with these patients. You're looking from Cedar Key to Gainesville, that's an hour and 20 minutes with a really critical patient. So they're actually doing it. And so those are kind of my heroes right now, are these paramedics and EMTs in the rural areas that are actually kind of doing it. But, you know, it is a commitment. I mean, it is a lot of work, but, you know, we talk about financial stuff, and the correlation is that I have a scrapbook, not from when I was flying, but just the 10 years I was on an ambulance. I have a scrapbook, and this is when newspapers were very prevalent, and nobody sees a newspaper. Well, I guess we have one that comes out once a week here, but I tell my students all the time, if you offered me $10 million for my scrapbook, I would give it to you. It has letters from patients in it. It has newspaper articles on calls that I've ran, and it's just invaluable to me.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to share with everybody is that's what a passion is. You know, you make a scrapbook out of stuff that you've done. That's not a bad thing.
When money is not worth it,
Oh,
it's
gosh.
invaluable to the
Yeah.
scrapbook.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming and
Oh, thank you for
giving us
inviting
your
me.
message today. And for those Beyond Entrepreneur watchers, I will see you guys next week with episode 3. So stay tuned, and y'all have a great day. Bye.